So here we are, afternoon of Higher Ground. I hate to say it, our last session. Yes, we're bringing it in. We're bringing it in. So several times throughout the program, people have sort of said, I want to move from, being in a big company to some kind of tech startup, or I want to do something that's a little risky or something a little different for my career. And so I was really excited when Ty submitted this talk to really talk about, hey, it's okay to take that risk. It's okay to sort of jump to the next level. And I'm really excited that Ty is going to share what that process is all about. So let's give it up for Ty.
Thank you, Kathleen. Super warm intro. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself as a human being in this process. It's a lot of storytelling. It's not going to be technical. It will be littered with swear words. If you're offended with cursing, if you're from a certain part of the US and it's cussing, leave the room now. I'm not that filtered. So let's get into it. So the whole idea behind this and the inspiration was my career, and a big part of who I am. I'm not going to read all this shit to you, but at the same time, from a background standpoint, education, certificates, like all these fucking things led me to an idea. And the idea was, I really like security. I found out at an early stage at a small consulting place that I wanted to be in fintech. And through my journey at JP Chase, rolling like one of the very first static analysis engines, Ounce Labs, before it was bought by IBM, to Capital One and rolling out, and I know that's kind of a loaded term this week, just with everything going on, but I was there over 5.5 years building application security, a red team, all these functions, but I also did some mergers and acquisitions. And with it, that was when I had a moment in my life to really determine, wow, it seems cool as shit when we acquire these companies where it's 10 to 20 people or maybe 30 people, and they've been on this awesome journey together. They're not mired with the quagmire of the OCC, the FFIC, the SEC, name another three-letter acronym that does not have their shit together and ask the same questions. When you work in certain organizations, maybe, and I'm not going to say it's like this is how it is, but maybe you get to a point where all you do is manage people because you have a director title, and maybe you talk to a bunch of people and all you do is no more hands-on keyboard and you just make PowerPoints like these. And sometimes that's the case, sometimes it's not. I have a little bit of joy because I've been beaten up a lot by creating a lot of storytelling decks. And for me, this is a part of who I am now. So I really appreciate everything from that company. But a big part of it was seeing all these cool startups come, get acquired, cash out, go do their thing, and then they started over again with a new idea. And this mentality of anything's possible versus I work in these environments where I'm like, hey guys, let's talk about what's not possible this week. Launching every AWS instance, leaving the S3 containers open wherever the fuck you want to do it, and then kind of doing that quagmire of security. But at scale, it gets tough. So I made the decision then. I'm like, yeah, I want to start ramping down. And I fucked up and I went over to Target, and that was 400,000 people, and I was told I was going to be an individual contributor, and the next thing you know, I'm managing 37 people around the world building a team of 47. And I'm like, why did I do this? So I stayed there exactly 365 days. Started working towards getting out of where I was and going more towards IC. So I ended up in SF at a company called Lending Club. Started to wear multiple hats in the Bay Area and just got the confidence to jump into this thing called Periscope Data. And we were just acquired about 3 months ago. Not a cash exit, I'm not done yet, but at the same time, I'm a security dude for some amazing founders and a great culture, and that's a part of this discussion. Those lessons learned that I've taken from all this other shit and have been able to be successful, to build a team, to get budget, to have trust, and to enable the business. So as we go through, I think I have, 23 minutes left, and a big part of it is this is the last talk, so maybe I can go over, but likely if we wrap, I'm happy to chat more in person, and that's more my engagement style than like this. So I want to start with this term, ikigai. I didn't really talk about me as a human being. You just saw my resume, basically, and that's not a good representation of me. I'm half Japanese, half American, but I'm 100% American. And what I mean by that is I'm part of this melting pot that has been granted an opportunity in this wonderful country, mired by all this other shit that I know a lot of people are very upset by. But if you've been around the world as a military brat or in other countries, you come to really appreciate the things you get to do, the differences you get to make and the impact you get to have. But there's a term here, ikigai, that it just doesn't translate well. It translates like dog shit. And it's really, I'm not gonna draw a Venn diagram, but it's this Venn diagram. It's like what you're good at, what you're passionate about, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for. And right in the fucking middle, that should be the thing you should be doing. If you're working at some job and making these PowerPoints and you're like, why do I fucking hate my life? Why am I sitting through this goddamn breach and this other breach and trying to convince everyone else this is a breach? And the lawyers are telling me, hey, a botnet is not a breach. I'm like, well, logged into the account, so is that a breach? Because I think that's a breach. Like, and those are things where if you're wasting your energy in life, don't do it, because there are other options out there. My point for this is figure out what the thing is that drives you. For me, it is 100% information security, mostly app and product security, but now the larger mindset, the cultural shift. I think that's a big element. So if you want to learn more about this, search it. But again, you can chat with me as well. So let's start thinking about this, like the planning for the move. I mentioned I was at Capital One. I got this fucking bright idea, but I also had this thing called a development action plan. Most folks have a 5-year plan of like what they want to do, and they're like, this is cool. I'm going to just say some shit and never do it. I'm a person that doesn't have time for people that say things but never gets it done. Development action plan actually cranks it down just a little bit. You can give whatever time, whatever stipulation. I say shoot for 1 to 2 years. I say shoot for 3 top-level goals, have a whole ton of micro goals, 10 to 12 under each one, and just start checking these boxes. And not only is it validating and feel good, but every 6 months when you go back and you check in, or say you get a new boss at work, and I've used this as a tool to help me expand my career every fucking time. They're like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm your new boss. I'm like, cool, here's who I am. Show them this thing. Say, here's where I need help. Here's where I want you to lean in. Here's what I'd like to do. And if there's nothing here that you can help me with, just say everything's awesome and let me know when I'm fucking up, and I will just make you look great, right? Those are things where I think a development action plan is huge. It's not your fucking resume that says what I've done. It's saying where I'm going, what I'm going to do. And you'll be surprised how many leaders will be like, hey, I got a friend that maybe at the startup they want to talk to you. I'm like, cool. And that turns into an advisor role. That turns into things where you build relationships and you get to do more things because you're just putting it out there and stating a mission and a manifesto. The next one, no one loves talking about this. Jumping into a Series B startup, I took a 30% pay cut. It was fucking painful, but at the same time, I never let my lifestyle inflation outpace my expectation. I will say taking a 15-hour flight to Israel in economy is pretty goddamn rough. But at the same time, that's part of the growth of the company I'm at now. And I just have to roll with it as opposed to getting business class and eating steak dinners every night. Eat steak dinners every night while you're here on Vendors. I highly recommend it. But a big part of this, make sure you have enough cash in case there's that oh shit quarter, that oh shit month. And next thing you know, you walk into a meeting room, they're like, hey, you're one of our highest paid employees. And I'm like, but I'm not. And I don't make that much. Just to be clear, I'm very much underpaid, like a lot of other people. And they're like, well, this could be your last day. And it's like, all right, be prepared to be confident. And what I mean by this is your financial buffer should be a thing that you're working your ass off in your career to save money. I'm not going to get into the whole financial freedom aspect of everything, but have enough confidence where if you didn't have a job tomorrow, you will have a job tomorrow, right? Insecurity right now, like if you just had no job where you're at, fuck it, I don't care. What that means is you get into this enabler mindset where you can take on risk, you can try all these things, and you can actually present to the board and be like, hey, I just want to let you know, it's fucked up. And they're like, oh, well, how's it so fucked up? I'm like, you remember that cybersecurity tabletop we did? We still haven't rolled out HashiCorp Vault. We still haven't done fucking social media training. We haven't done this. And you can be very blunt and direct without having any personal attachment because you're like, hey, I like what I do. I love working with y'all. But at the same time, I don't have to be here. And in the moments where you have these hard discussions, and I'll explain one a little bit later, it gives you empowerment. And that's what I mean by having that financial buffer is have the confidence to go in because if times are tough and you're like, yeah, I need a new raise and like sales aren't working, half the team's bleeding out, attrition is garbage, you're not getting a raise. And I highly recommend when you talk about money, it's before you join or before you get promoted. Other than that, shut the fuck up, enjoy your money, be cool. The last one is your support network. So the big one there with your financial buffer. Whew, my wife is my keystone that keeps me enabled to do anything in life, like putting on pants and these specific pants. But at the same time, having that conversation of like, we're not gonna do X in the next couple of years. We're not gonna do Y. I know you want a 2-carat diamond ring to replace that one I bought 10 years ago. It ain't gonna happen anytime soon. Sorry, babe, and then you deal with that wrath. But at the same time, you need to have that support, not only at home, but in your actual professional network. And that's why I love B-Sides. This is one of those environments where you meet all sorts of cool people because you didn't have to spend 3 G's to go to a thing and it's just snake oil and sales and you're just like, I'm tired. As opposed to here, you should come, get energy, get inspired, have good connections. And this piece here, the hard lesson for me, going from a Capital One to a Target, a lot of companies don't call you back when you're like, hey, I want to use your service. They're like, we're not able to sell for a deal less than $50,000. I'm like, I have $12,000 for this. Can you help me out? You know, and you got to like really hone in on the friends and the relationships. So prepare for that shitty moment when you had all this power. Like I was 26 and I'm working at a fucking financial institution and they're trusting me with a 2 million run rate and a 2 million investment budget, $4 million a year. I didn't have 4 million. I don't even know how to rock 4 million. But at the same time, these are the things you get enabled. But at the same time, when you're dealing with the sales cycle of certain companies, your 4 million, they want all of it. When you're a dude with like a $250,000 security budget because you had to convince your organization and the board to do it, you got to be very critical of how you spend money. But at the same time, you have to be critical because your options that you're vesting to get there, you want them to be worth something. So you don't want to just spend money all over the place and ruin it for everyone on that journey. So which startup? You're like, sounds great, sign me up. This goes back to that slide, Ikigai, right? What do you care about? For me, I've been working in all these security teams, building out things where top 10 financial becomes a top 5. A 100 security person organization needs to transform because all they did was a compliance hammer and had to create this thing called product security and all this other shit. Fun, great. The big problem I found in every security team, there's a data problem. How many people have a data lake? But one person, congrats. It's a data swamp probably because you're like, it's unstructured and I can't actually get to it. I can't use any of this data. One of the places I worked, we built basically the company I work at. It was cool for a little bit. It was great. We actually even built a mobile app. Our CISO was like, we should sell this. And I'm like, I can't work for this guy anymore because he's just going to steal the thunder. I got to go. But the data problem within security teams is very real. How do you translate the message of all this metrics? And you can hear other talks on that. But for me, every fucking place I worked, I don't want to make PowerPoints. I don't want to use Tableau. I just want to tell you, it ain't good. Here's why. And here are like our top 3 risks, or here are top 5. Like, you want to review the 50? We can, but that's a waste of time because you're not going to prioritize shit out of that. I'm going to give you 3. I'm going to go crush 3, and we'll work next. So I think a big thing here when it comes to data for me, the vertical is very simple. I love security. This company wants to pay me a lot less money to come do everything besides security. But the interview is super critical. If you're interviewing for a company and they're like, hey, I don't have a job description. And my last 3 jobs, there was no description. It was a conversation, sounds great, let's talk money, interviews, all this shit, and we get there. But in the interview process, if you're going to a startup, request that you meet the founders. Request that you meet with legal. Request that you meet with HR. If you're a security person and you're not friends with these people, good luck. You have no constituents, you have no fans, you have no champions inside the org. If you go in and you meet with like engineering, maybe there's like a person that's external audit that's kind of in the company, but not really in the company, so they're not fully there, but they have options and it's really weird. You're not gonna get the benefit of what is that company and how is the culture. So when you unpack these things, make sure you're working with good people. Make sure you're gonna be in the slog with people when shit's bad, the quarter sucked, and the marketing team just flipped and that's 7 people gone and you're resetting the cycle on it again. You're willing to fight. If you're not willing to do that, don't fucking join that startup. Go somewhere else because that commitment of maybe 1 year, probably not. 5 years, maybe. 7 years, probably. But you have to be in this long-term mindset, even though it's in this microcosm of every day must count. Every day has to be a result. So when I think about interviewing, make sure you have clarity around the people you're working for and what their expectations are. The early versus late stage is a tough one. I think if you're in a scenario where you're used to like a healthy paycheck and a bonus and really great benefits and like 401k matching, do a late stage. And late stage is like Series E, Series F, but that also means your options are going to be like an okay bonus if things work out. Like if you joined Lyft a year before they IPO'd or Uber before they IPO'd, you're going to get something, but it's not going to be like when you joined when they were disrupting the entire market, right? Series A, Series B, it's a bigger dice roll, but you get to grow with the company. Keep that in mind. That's going to be fun as hell. If you join a company like 12, 15 people.
I was just going to say early stage
It is.
Overwhelmingly lack of desire of security people that are in this field.
And that's part of the interview, right? I joined a company, they're like, we want to do this, we don't know how to do it, we're kind of doing some things.
Go in as VP of engineering or something, and you can offer some security.
Correct. And again, I think I had a very lucky experience so far. I might not have a job after 30 more days, and I'll explain why later. But the early piece is rare. But this is part of that network. That's part of building this thing out of like, what is the plan to get there? You will find a lot of startups actually want security. They just don't know what the fuck it means. Next, so let's get started. Let's start like fucking grinding in this like startup. We got the job, we're there. They said a bunch of shit, but they have no idea what they actually want. Number one, have an agile roadmap. I have a lot of friends that are from bigger companies. They said, Ty, plan out your 3-year roadmap before you even get there. I'm like, I have no data. I don't know people. I don't know who I'm gonna piss off when I present this thing. That's not how I roll. Show up, knock some shit out. For me, it was GDPR compliance, SOC 2, Type 2. It's like, check, check, kind of did those things. They weren't that difficult as a security person, but my agile roadmap adjusted. So every quarter, it's like, here is this clear, crisp vision of like what we're gonna do. I'm committing, I'm gonna execute. I don't have a team. I'm gonna get the help of the rest of the org to lean in and get this shit done because it's important. Otherwise, maybe we get sued for GDPR. Maybe we don't. I don't know. I don't have data to back it up, but I gotta go run and get a bunch of shit done. The next thing there is really building out that roadmap from, okay, your first 90 days are done. Likely that job interview was all they had the vision for what security is going to be. Now you gotta tell them. Now you gotta let everyone know. Using consistent language, a framework, something there will allow you to have that dialogue. For me, NIST, CSF, the cybersecurity framework, super easy to use. Not that easy to bubble up in a pretty chart, but at the same time, you can just show like red, yellow, green. Here's how we're doing at the top 4. Cool. We have no ability to fucking respond. Why not? No one's ever thought about a response because we've never detected shit. Why didn't we detect shit? Because we're only looking at like one thing. You know, and you have to go through those discussions to bring reality. The intelligent risks. This is back to make sure you have your financial buffer because you're gonna roll the dice on some of these conversations where like, I'm gonna pull in the CEO because a third party just got popped. And I want to push a communication out to our customers because I believe their connections will break based on this message. I've done the analysis with an engineer to find this specific Ruby gem, thanks Salesforce, that they had a bad thing. Their security team basically captured everything in the URL, and that include username and password, but it was an old dated gem, like this shit happens, but at the same time, your security team can be your biggest risk as well. Long story there, I pull in the CEO to a room, I'm like, Harry, it ain't good. What I say is like, I have 47 customers out of 1,000, and I believe that on this date, Wednesday at this time, based on this email that we received, these customers probably also received it. Now, what that means is, if they fix it, great. They update their creds, they update the job, like we do all this work, everything will be fine. Or we disclose this quickly, we contact, we use our CSMs, we get ahead of it, and we just say on the context of, this is not a security incident for us, this is more, we want to make sure your functionality doesn't break. And he's like, Ty, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to communicate this shit now. He's like, sounds great. And that was the first time I had leverage. I also had support, and I went to bat with a really not great scenario, and I knew I had trust, and I was building trust through these little battles to get to this larger war. The next thing is that larger war, when people bring you the stupidest shit, like, hey, we have a flat network and there's nothing on it, like, why aren't we scanning it? Because it doesn't fucking matter, right? If everything's cloud-based or SaaS-based, or you rely on Okta, or you have like some VPN tunnel, or you have maybe SSH that's done properly to your production environment, your network might not matter. One key example for me is like everyone bitching about Chromecasts. These Chromecasts, Ty, they're like unsecured. Like, is this a problem? Like, I want to be honest with you. From an impact likelihood standpoint of me giving a shit, this is very low. And what I mean by this is like, you have to physically be close, or maybe you try to get to it based on our network and somehow it's exposed. But like, why am I gonna spend more than 3 to 7 seconds unpacking that? I'm not. So that's what I mean. Like, do you wanna be known as the person with a brand that like, hey, you know what? Ty did a great job. He secured all our Chromecasts. No. You wanna be the person that enabled every fucking large deal because you're like, hey, our SOC 2's done. Oh, they had questions. I got on a fucking call with their CISO and we agreed on all the red lines and the deal is done. It was like, wait, how'd that happen? I'm like, you talk experts and then you push out the lawyer and things just get done, right? So you get these wins, you think about what is the thing you're trying to be known for and what are you trying to do. More to that, you'll notice here at the bottom, PowerPoint to a minimum, storytelling to a max. The Bay Area and tech startups, like no one wants to see slides, but I had a great boss at one point in my career and an active mentor, Brian Orm. He used to do this to me. He did this like Jedi mind trick. He's like, Ty, I want you to tell a story, whatever fucking presentation it was, like, hey, I need static analysis. Hey, I need to build this code review factory. Hey, I need to do component analysis. He's like, I want you to tell a story. And with that story, if it happens to be PowerPoint, that's okay. If it's a whiteboard, that's fine. He's like, but I'm not going to tell you how to tell the story. But ultimately, he Jedi'd me into always making a goddamn PowerPoint, and it was very precise and brief. But at the same time, I've seen him do it to his like future employees in life. But a big part of it is, some of your engineers don't want to see slides. Whiteboard it. When you whiteboard the SDLC, and you say, here's the software development lifecycle, or here's DevOps, I'm going to go on a small rant. Stop saying SecDevOps, please, if you take one thing away. Stop saying DevSecOps. It's just DevOps. Quality is built into DevOps. Security is a subset of quality. Stop. I kind of throw that in there now and then because I'm sick of this shit, and I know it's a marketing term. No different than zero trust, but at the same time, be a part of the team, be a part of the culture. Like, I'm grinding with engineers looking at fucking PRs. I'm sitting there and having intelligent discussions because we went through a vulnerability to fix, and then I can go to like a little sharing session that the engineers already do, and I'm like, here's time of use, time of check, and why it matters when it comes to like authorization. And that churns into a lot of good conversation. So next, let's talk about like where these requirements came from. Why do you have a job? I don't know. Because I got lucky and someone called me one fucking day and it was just the perfect time when I was sick of the shit. No. For me, it was this thing where they had no idea what they wanted. They kind of heard some things, reached out to me, and I'm like, you know what, I'm tired as fuck of my current role. And I turned that page where I was open to new opportunities. And it was just the perfect time. So I got lucky. But at the same time, the origins of their security requirements, for Periscope, it was customers. Customers want security, they want assurance, they want trust, they want confidence. We're a data company. And if we have all this data for data analytics and the data science lifecycle, and show me how many data scientists redact or reduce or make things structured or have any idea what's in the data lake? Swamp? Let's call it a swamp still, yeah. Whatever it is, like every data science team you work with, they want everything. Our platform enables that. So I always have to be like, you practice your hygiene. Everything's encrypted, here, here, here. Here's all the things, here's the native controls in AWS. But for me, the origin of where you're getting the drive is gonna tell you a big part of that interview process. If they say we want good security, we want to empower our customers to have a clean, smooth cycle, you're probably sold, you're gonna get a lot of wins. But if they're like, you know, we really don't wanna do security, but you seem all right, like, you don't want budget, right? Like, you don't want headcount, you just wanna like, sit here and like, we just want to put you on emails to say like, we have a security person. Don't be that person. I've got some friends that ended up in those roles and they're just sitting there and they're like, how do I get budget? I'm like, storytelling. Like, when was the last incident that you used? When was the last thing that mattered? When was the last customer that they lost to a lead because you didn't have SOC 2 Type 2 or you didn't have fucking ISO? Those are things that you have to generate as the business mindset. The expected outcomes, when we start getting into this, what are you being measured by? I think that's pretty simple. If you want to talk KPIs, KRIs, go somewhere else. I don't talk that way. I talk about like, what is the thing that led to the business outcome? And then continuous iteration. For me, this is taking feedback, adjusting, and rolling with it so you can empower that business once again. So let's switch. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the culture of security, but this comes back to the business model overall. Know what the goal is. Is it to sell? Is it to get users? Is it to get market share? Just be a part of that. And don't be waiting at your desk or your shared space or whatever it is and hope that someone pulls you into the meeting. Go. Just be like, how are we selling today? What are the deals? What are the things that matter? How many users do we have? How many bots do we have? Start injecting a lot of that thought process into the business model and then start really focusing. And I put sales enablement. It's just purely enablement, right? I'm gonna cover it up. It's enablement. Enable the culture, enable the business. Be a person that's not a no person. This is just fucking 12 years ago in security. Like, I'm just gonna say it again, be an enabler. And that means someone that has a logical thought process to a contextual threat model. If you're another person that says we don't want to be the next Capital One just because you use AWS, that's not valid, right? Think about your company, think about your programming language, think about, are you even in AWS, right? And you have to have these logical conversations. If you're all GCP, maybe you're not going to be that way. But at the same time, if your board asks, we don't want to be that, why'd that happen? You're like, I don't work there, I don't have those details, that's not us. The things I care about is this environment, this threat model, this attack surface. So iterate on that and really ground people when you start to educate them on it. So I'm not going to spend a shit ton of time on training. I think the previous person did a great talk. With it, I just want to mention presence over policy. Don't point back to the InfoSec policy unless you really need to. But coaching is going to get you a lot more wins when you sit down with one engineer to do that thing to say, I'm not going to tell you to validate all inputs. We're just going to talk about the framework we're going to start using consistently to validate all inputs as opposed to like whack-a-mole to death. Again, I think this is pretty simple. I hate CBTs. Most of you hate CBTs. Your engineers don't like CBTs either, just as a reality check. And if you go in without a contextually grounded thing, like you're like, we got to do AppSec. We gave them an OWASP top 10. I'm going to go into a lot of rants on that one. I'm going to save them. Contextualize why. If you go in and your AppSec program starts with OWASP top 10 because PCI or something else, you fucking fail at AppSec. I will not talk to you. If you go in and say, these are the things we care about because of the languages, because of the frameworks, because of how we deliver software. And here's the thing, if you don't deliver software and you outsource everything, your AppSec program is in your contract language. And I think those are things that you should think about before just rolling out shit-ass CBTs. Next, staffing. This one hit me pretty hard. I was willing to take a 30% pay cut, but shit, none of my friends were. Now what? I didn't have an answer. I sat there and I'm like, okay, let me go to the well. Let me see all the people that I've been like mentoring, chatting with, want to get into security. You're going to see a commonality, especially at this conference, people without security backgrounds getting into security. And that's the only thing I hire for. You got a passion? It's going to be security for the next like 2 to 3 years. Shit, let's go. If you want to get into security because you see a large paycheck, get the fuck out. Don't do this to us because you're lowering the bar. If you're joining because you're like, this is interesting. I've always had this mindset. I'm looking for people to help. As you're running a program, you can't do this with your entire team. It's going to be very difficult to spend those times and that energy to mentor, educate all the time in your own team. Take the time to choose wisely. And if you choose that one person or 2 people, you will get to a really great place. The pay now or pay later, I say this shit all the time. It's like, hey, we either do the security thing or we just deal with a breach later. For me, it was like cybersecurity tabletop, I want a security retainer. They're like, why do you need a security retainer? I'm like, in the tabletop, show me how you're gonna get a hold of anyone that we don't have a contract with. And the answer was like, well, I got friends. I'm like, they didn't pick up the phone. I'm like, Ty, I called another friend. I'm like, they didn't pick up the phone. This breach is so bad, like as you're talking through a tabletop, you're just like doing a gamified way of saying, look, if we have no structure or anything planned, you're not gonna have that relationship ready to go. The last thing I'll mention here is the employee life cycle. Outside of what we were talking about, building your team, look at the org, look at the people within the org. Your sales cycle may cycle every 18 months, maybe 12 months. Your marketing team, for me, it's been like 8 months. It's been rough. But when I look at engineers in our current org, 2 to 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, it's unheard of. It's crazy to me, but that's part of the magic of the why I'm choosing to be here and staying. But also, I asked those questions during the interview process, and they all turned out to be true. This goes back to your contextual threat model of like offboarding, thinking of how you're managing people if you give them a Mac or if you give them a Chromebook or like what do you lock down or not lock down, right? So we start getting into this, why we did this. Why did we join this startup? We want our options worth something, right? We're not just these good-natured people that just want to help change the world. We want to cash out as well. So going through an acquisition, it can be fucking rough. I will say in my past 120 days, I rolled the dice. I'm going to go over time, if that's okay.
Just a few minutes, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm going to keep going. I had to negotiate my own job in the new world, and a part of that was I was already 30% under, and now I'm going to do this from 160 people, now for 800 people in a global entity. I'm not ready, mentally, emotionally, financially. And those were a lot of hard-ass discussions being acquired. Not a cash exit, just more opportunity to get to that exit. That line under, IPO, initial public offering, we all kind of want that, but that's not always what we want, right? An IPO can go poorly. I was at a company called Lending Club. My shares are worth nothing. They looked great when I signed up, and now they're worth dog shit, you know? When you look at the strike price or you look at the math behind valuation of a company, there's a couple of great articles on Medium. I think Robinhood just put out on their one newsletter. It's kind of just a breakdown of how to look at options. And if that's something you need to spend time on, I'm not going to cover it here, but I highly recommend understanding what is the valuation, what are the options, what's outstanding, and then what's your delusion. If your delusion becomes this illusion that you're going to have money, maybe this isn't worth it. And then the threat model changes. When you're acquired, everything changes. You have to think about who are those key engineers. If they leave, this shit is fucked. Who are the people that are like the domain knowledge owners? Like, are they incented to stay? Who are the people that are running like the project management initiative to combine the company? Are they being transitioned out? I'm dealing with that this week. Literally, my project manager has been hanging for over 4 weeks. And as a human, sitting there being like, what's it even like? How are you dealing with this? How have we done this to you? And it's like they're trying to manage this project, but they're also managing to their own exit because they just can't say, we want to keep you, and everyone around is saying it. So these are things you have to really consider when you go through these types of changes. So now what? We've done this talk, we've chatted, I'm over time. I want you to have a couple of takeaways, and then we can chat after this. I'll get off the stage. Have a defined plan. I think that's always good in life. Be ready to be agile. If you haven't read the Agile Manifesto, I highly recommend it. It takes 2 seconds. But be prepared to wear many hats. The thing I didn't cover when I joined Periscope, I signed on for security, I took on compliance, I owned governance, I took on IT, I played lawyer, convinced us to get internal counsel 9 months after the fact, but I played lawyer quite a bit. And I also did physical security, because the Bay Area is scary as hell. If you've been to RSA or anything out there, like it's kind of getting better, it's kind of getting worse. But these are things that I didn't really build into my own mindset before I got there, but at the same time, I care about the people. We can respond to a cybersecurity incident. I don't know what to do about a physical security incident, and I've spent a lot of time doing that. So wearing those hats, be open to just saying yes and doing. If you're coming from a world of just like, this is all I do, the startup life is not going to be for you in that early stage. Go to the late stage and then figure out how to be a little bit more flexible. And then cultural enablement, we've already talked about it. I will skip the rest there and let's wrap. Hit me up on anything. I'm best on LinkedIn, I think. I suck on Twitter. Instagram is mostly just my personal shit, but LinkedIn is the thing. Like, literally, connect with me, send me a message. I'm always happy to chat. That's actually a place where I get real connections. Twitter, for me, I don't know about you, some people love it in InfoSec, but I feel like I'm screaming into a chasm, and then someone says something back, and then there's no dialogue, and then like, do I DM them? Like, do I not? It doesn't work for me. So yeah, thank you for your time. I'm happy to field any questions.
So let's give him a round of applause.